is the environmental dimension. Food subsidy, for example, we are spending on rice and wheat, which replace the local food grain production, grains, which is environmentally benign production. That way, it is adding this food subsidy is adding so many more food miles also. That is one dimension. On the other hand, this fertilizer subsidy also replaces the organic production inputs. That's the one point.
Very much. It's a delight to be in your session. I really appreciate Renana's effort on this research legacy, which basically started in Delhi government about 2009. I was a member of that committee at that time. And you have a report here on the government's, I was looking into it. But very quickly about the methodology and the reporting of your Madhya Pradesh villages. What I would like to know is, did you withdraw all other programs when you implemented this? If not, then there would be a lot of errors in it, because if the households are also receiving NREJ cash, or if the households are receiving money from women's program such as the self-help group, I think there will be a lot of distortion. So it is very difficult to attribute your list of achievements as reported in the booklet. I would like to know how those controls were done. I have questions not necessarily for this session, but the earlier session. Universal, we are just using the word which is globally used, universal basic. What is universal? You know, after all, we have to target and choose the poor. You cannot have a universal program in India at all. I think Mr. Junaid Ahmed made that very clear. So your experiment has been done in Madhya Pradesh, mostly tribal communities and a homogeneous population. India is not homogeneous all across. There is huge diversity. How will you factor occupational diversity, diversity by social groups and communities is going to be a challenge. And so you need more pilots in different settings. Two last points. In this whole debate, we are looking into a kind of individual approach, but I think what we need to understand is the intra-household dynamics, particularly resource allocation between girls and boys and between men and women. I think that's a major story for India's development. And I don't see that happening, at least in the literature at the moment. And the last point which I have is the market linkages. You know, beautifully Radha Ben said about how she is creating a market of her own, getting goats and selling them. If every house has goats and selling them, where will they sell them? And so that is a major challenge when you get into the complexity of India, when you go beyond homogeneous population. So establishing market linkage is a big challenge. And I really liked Professor Berman's analysis, although I have some comments on Professor which I'll talk to him about the universality. It cannot be a universal basic income in India. It has to be some sort of targeting, because there is a huge class difference and income difference. So that's basically the comments.
Thank you, Dr. Saleh. I thought did you have your hand up, Mr. Aluwalia?
I didn't, but you're reading my mind.
I'm reading your mind. Well, on an empty stomach, I'm doing very well. Would you like to have a question?
I just thought I'd ask that in the whole...
Please, take the microphone.
The beginning, you know, the how much, I think that's a relevant issue, how much also. And it just occurred to me that so long as we remain below the minimum wage, right? So long as we remain below the minimum wage, none of the issues that Honorable Minister mentioned in the morning would kick in, which is the additive fiscal impact of having a universal transfer. Because if I'm in the government and I'm earning 20,000 bucks a month and you're transferring 5 to everybody, I'd say my wage should be 25,000 for tomorrow. Am I thinking correct? Maybe Junaid can tell me, or you could tell me yourself, or maybe the professor could add on.
Okay, we'll put that down as a question. Mr. Standing had a question there, and then the lady here. I think they will probably wrap it up. I think we need, no, I'm sorry, well, would you concede? No, you won't. So, okay, we'll give it to you. We'll give it to you.
Yeah.
Please, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask a question of Dr. Ahmed in particular, but just refer to the last speaker. Only one of the 9 villages that received the basic income was a tribal village. The other 8 were far from homogeneous in any sense of the term. So if you read the book, you'll find there's a lot of evidence of different communities. My question is really a provocative one. I had a lot of sympathy with the line of argumentation that you took, and I think we have, broadly similar perspectives. But the question is this: should we concentrate on trying to improve the efficiency of targeted schemes? And don't forget, there's international experience of trying to do that for 50 years, and they failed, really have failed. Or try to overcome the political blockages that are in favor of inefficient and inequitable subsidy schemes. In other words, where should we as intellectuals put our weight of analysis? My own feeling, as you can tell by the way I'm posing the question, but I would like to see how you respond to that particular question.
Okay, one last question, the lady in front. No, I think I'm just going to take one last question, and then we'll give a minute perhaps to those who want to speak.
Thanks to all the panelists. My name is Sanjana Harinakti. So earlier someone raised the issue of intra-household dynamics. And I'm just wondering, since most current schemes we have are targeted at the household versus this, which would be, an individually targeted scheme. So do you see any potential in kind of re-engineering gender and social relations as a result? And if so, how would that be tested? Because those are very long-term sort of effects, and a 1 or 2 year study would probably not be able to capture it.
Okay, thank you very much. Renana, do you want to go first and perhaps say a minute, and then I'll give a minute to each of mine.
I actually don't think I would be at this stage able to handle the methodology question, only because it would require a long answer. I think Guy has already given but the methodology, if we can discuss it later. Also, as Guy has pointed out, our book is outside. So, but we could talk about that. I wanted to get to the intra-household question, which was raised by both of you. And I don't have a complex answer on that. I just have a simple answer based on not only this study, but our general experience. When you put money into the hands of women, which they can spend in which way they want, it re-engineers the intra-household decisions. And we saw that in this also, but we've seen it in many other places.
Great, thank you, Renana. Professor Brennan?
Yes, I react essentially to what Guy said. Don't we have to overcome the political blockages? The problem is you have to overcome them politically. There is no way that you're going to get the minimum income scheme in India accepted under the current government, or the former government for that matter. And that is because the sharing behavior, which is the basic assumption for the plea making for a minimum income, a basic income, the behavior of sharing is simply not around. And it's not the political parties which I blame for that, it's also a reaction of Indian society. And we have seen, it's not only in Indian society, we have also seen that in the global north, how the welfare state has become dismantled because the better off decided that too much had been taken away out of what is their due, the outcome of economic growth. And that situation, the non-poor unwilling to take care of the poor, that is a major stumble block, a major blockade to an income, to a basic income scheme. So you have to find the political way to see it through, Guy. And when I doubt if it is available in the world at large, I certainly doubt that it is available in India.
Okay, thank you, Professor. Before I turn to my other panelists, I just wanted to mention that I think we need to keep the context of India in mind, just as I think Professor Raman has just reminded us. A simple calculation shows that if we transfer something like 30 rupees a day to 20%, the bottom 20% of India's population of 1.3 billion, then that would be something of the order of 2.5% of GDP. So that's 33 rupees or 33 rupees, that's roughly half a cent a day, or about $180 a year to the bottom 20% of 1.3 billion people. That's about 2.5% of GDP. Compare that with the total revenues of government, which are roughly about 9% of GDP. So this requires us to do a number of things if we're going to do this targeted bottom 20% cash transfer. And I do want to say that I think one thing that there is really unanimity over anywhere in the world is that cash transfers, unconditional cash transfers, are a really progressive policy instrument. They achieve a lot of the things that we see, for example, in the MP pilots. The agency that Arvind Subramaniam talked about, the ability to make choices as opposed to providing in-kind transfers. So the things that would be required, even if we just did 20%, first of all, we probably have to close down all the existing poverty programs. So Manrega, the pension schemes, the old age things that we do. And this is a matter of deep concern to people like Jean Drèze, for example, who has thought about this intensely, that we would have to shut down everything to be able to transfer even this amount of money to the bottom 20%. We will need the capacity to identify the 20%. And that's one of the big motivating ideas for a universal. So you don't have to, all of us will get the money, even though we may not deserve it. So that requires state capacity. Even if there's a gap of 2.5%, between 2.5% and 9% of revenue, government has to spend on a lot of other things: roads, infrastructure, telecom, defense, all of those things, health, education. So there's going to be a lot of fiscal reforms that will be required, including hugely in our tax system. And that is already a problem that we face. And finally, we would have to have the political maturity, what Professor Bremen also referred to, where we simply don't take this and make it another patronage program. Because so far, votes have been bought essentially on what you can do for me. If you give me something, I will give you my vote, rather than a universal transfer that is available to everybody. So this is if you just do it for the bottom 20%. But if you do it for 100% of the population, then we are talking of something like 12% of GDP, just 30 rupees a day, 12% of GDP, whereas the government only has 9% if it's spent on nothing else. So, when we think about the word universal, we have to be very careful. It's a great idea. And at $55,000 per capita, which is roughly where I think the Netherlands is, or the United States is a bit beyond that. Certainly in Sweden, we can think about that. Because in Sweden, a basic income will be something of the order of 0.3 or 0.4 or 0.5% of GDP. Not a big deal at all. But when you are talking of 12% of GDP, when the government only has 9% of GDP to spend on everything that it needs to spend, including on its own salaries, we're talking about things that are not really practical. So we have to think and focus on the key idea here, which is the targeted nature. How can we improve that targeting? How can we ensure that we have the political ability to reform our subsidy systems while protecting the poor, and then move on eventually to the creation of opportunity? I'm sorry, I just wanted to make that long intervention because I had avoided the temptation of doing so during the talk. But let me now turn to both Shekharji or Radhaben if they have a word. Shekharji, would you like to say a word?
मैं उस बात का आंसर करना चाहती हूँ जहाँ आपने नरेगा के बारे में पूछा है। खासकर ये अध्ययन एक तो सिर्फ आदिवासी गांव में नहीं किया हमने मध्य प्रदेश में, दूसरे भी गांव में किया। जैसे गाय भाई ने बताया कि हमारी बुक है बाहर, आप उसको देख सकते हैं। लेकिन ये जो पैसा था सिर्फ 300 रुपया महीना था, तो एक कोई बहुत बड़ा पैसा नहीं था कि जिसमें बहुत सारी चीज़ों से भी उनके पास पैसा आ रहा और ये भी काफ़ी सारा पैसा आ रहा है। जैसे राधाबेन ने बताया, उसके परिवार को सिर्फ 1000 रुपया महीना इसमें मिला। एक दूसरी बात मैं और इसके आगे जाके बोलना चाहती हूँ कि अगर हम नरेगा की बात करें, अभी मध्य प्रदेश में हम काफ़ी इसको लेके काम कर रहे हैं और इतने सारे प्रयासों के बावजूद भी हम हमारे सदस्यों को अभी 40 दिन का भी रोज़गार उसमें दिलवाने में कामयाब नहीं हो पा रहे हैं। तो ये जहाँ एक संगठन काम कर रहा है और जहाँ शायद संगठन नहीं है, तो 10 या 5 दिन का काम भी उनको इस स्कीम से नहीं मिल रहा और अभी परिवार के एक ही व्यक्ति को मिलता है 100 दिन का काम। धन्यवाद। आपको कुछ बोलना है राधाबेन? आप बोलना चाह रहे थे कि मिलना चाहिए, बोलो।
मैं ये बोलना चाह रही है कि कुछ अभी एक साल पैसे मिला था तो स्थिति अच्छी चलती थी, हमारे परिवार के जीवन सुधरता रहते। तो और ये कभी योजना वापस चालू हो सकती, कभी मिल सकती है तो वो परिवार आगे बढ़ सकता है। और भी वो क्योंकि जीवन में कुछ वो पशुपालन का है तो वो भी कभी कर सकता है। पशुपालन और ज़्यादा पाल लेंगे और बच्चे की कुछ पढ़ाई में थोड़ा कमज़ोर चल रहा है तो और पढ़ाई में बढ़ाई देंगे, प्राइवेट करवा देंगे।
Thank you. Junaid, final word?
Two final words. One regarding the issue of cash transfers in the hands of women and girls. The returns on it is unbelievable. In Bangladesh, the government set up a scholarship program where money is put in a bank account in the name of the girl and will be held there with the following condition: the girl has to finish the school and not get married during that school. At the same time, government is offering on the demand side for schools direct cash transfers if they increase the number of girls in the school. So what has happened is fascinating. For years we were wondering how to improve school sanitation. The moment girls, you were rewarding schools for enrolling girls, schools invested in toilets for girls. The other thing that happened is the fact that bank accounts were being opened for girls within families. The parents, and in particular the father, would start promoting girls to go to school. It's a fascinating intra-household shift in the storyline. But it's a very important paper by Martin Revellian that I would ask you to take a look at. He actually shows that household targeting of poverty is actually leading us to miss out a lot of targeting that we should be doing on an individual basis. So household poverty targeting is not perfect. And in fact, the numbers that he and his co-authors show really is forcing us to rethink how to think through targeting. In terms of Guy Standing's question, I have no doubt that if we could improve the service delivery, the welfare impact on the poor for improving the service delivery would be huge. Now the question to ask is, the political economy that's preventing that from happening, how do you deal with it? I found that most of the way we have dealt with service delivery has not taken into account the political economy constraints. And I think there's a whole new approaches that have emerged, over the last decade plus, where once you begin to recognize the political economy, the way to reform services becomes very different. Shekhar and I were part of the WDR 2004, Making Services Work for Poor People, was precisely looking at that. So I think that if we ignore the politics of the political economy, which the World Bank did for a long time, we miss out the ability to take forward reform. And I think that the implementation of any cash transfer program also has to take into account the political economy. Otherwise, that transfer itself may be captured.
Thank you, Junaid. With that, let me bring this session to a close. I think it's been an incredibly rich session. It's posed a number of different questions that we'll have to this afternoon and then all of tomorrow to discuss. So I want to give my panelists a big round of applause. And a big round of applause to all of you for sustaining your hunger. I think lunch is served, and we should all proceed to have lunch.
We should go for lunch, and please, 2:45, we can be back. And before we were closing down, the chairperson asked me, do I want to say something? And I'd like to say it now, which is really a big thanks to the chair for keeping us on schedule, and still allowing so much richness to emerge. Thank you.
Thank you, Renana. Thank you.